Okay, good day everybody. What is up? So, this is going to be another short one, I think, but with the Purge franchise turning 10 this year, I thought it was as good a time as any to go back and revisit the first one, even though it probably is still one of my least favorite in the franchise. Not my absolute least favorite. I mean, there was a point where I would have said it was my least favorite, but that was before we got the Forever Purge and the first Purge, so hindsight is 2020 as ever, right? But going back and watching this first one again, just kind of on its own terms, it's actually not a bad movie. So, of course, to get the major quintessential gripe about this first film out of the way up front, because I do agree with you all, yes, it sets up this outrageous, maybe even borderline stupid premise about all crime being legal for 12 hours, and then you see basically none of it. You're confined to this one family's house in this one affluent neighborhood in a gated community for the entire film. Which means that it ends up feeling like a home invasion thriller that just happens to have a narrative convenience written in to explain why the cops never show up. I mean, you get hints of it on grainy newsreel footage here and there from their home, but that just looks like stuff that you could have pulled from any sort of newsreel that happened to be playing that week. Like, you never really get this sense of frothing, brimming, widespread anarchy and violence. Fortunately, the sequels would make good on this and actually show us the calamity in all its B-movie glory. But for this first one, let's face it, it does end up feeling like a little bit of a cheap gimmick. Now, on the plus side, you do have Ethan Hawke and Lena Headey in this, both fantastic talents and both very seasoned genre performers. And I really don't think that you can overstate the importance of having those two on deck to kind of jack up the acting department in this first film, because without them, I feel like it would have really floundered. There's one shot in particular, a sustained long take, where you're following Ethan Hawke all the way down the stairs to the door where the Purgers are lurking, and then back again as he shuts the door behind him. And it's some really fantastic close-up acting from Ethan Hawke. He doesn't have too many lines in that scene, but he manages to pull you right in and tell you a whole story just with his eyes. And there's a couple other long takes like this. I mean, compared to where the series kind of went with its overall sort of trajectory of style, that very sort of shaky hand, sort of guerrilla style filmmaking, comparatively having this one made with some more traditionally composed and executed shots does help to make it kind of stand out from the bunch a little bit. And while confining the movie to one Whitey McWhitey neighborhood is admittedly a little bit of a letdown with this kind of a premise, I do appreciate that it is the one movie out of all the films in the franchise where you do actually see a degree of tension and infighting between the wealthy class themselves. The idea that the rest of the neighborhood would resent Ethan Hawke's character on some level for using his security business to profit off of the tension that occurs on that particular evening does feel like a convincing twist to me. The point earlier on in the movie where the stranger rushes in just as the daughter's boyfriend is coming to confront Ethan Hawke, and those things all come to a head literally at the same time, is actually a very effective moment. It's like the moment when the two Terminators converge on John Connor in Terminator 2 in that hallway in the mall. Keeping a character's true motivations concealed until the last possible second like that is the sort of thing that can backfire on you very easily. But here it manages to work in a way that never feels desperate or like it was being pulled out of thin air. Elsewhere, the pacing in the movie does leave things to be desired. I mean, this is a movie that is barely even an hour and 25 minutes. And even at that length, it does have a couple of stretches where it feels like it's just being chatty to fill the runtime. Although I do kind of enjoy Reese Nichols' performance as the Purge leader. I think that was his name. If I have butchered that, I will put the correct name down in the comments, as ever. But the overall feeling that I get with this first film, despite some entertaining moments and a couple of good performances, is that this was a film where the writer-director James DeMonaco kind of got cold feet and lost confidence in his own premise at the last second. Because, again, with a couple of small things removed from the story and the screenplay, this would just be a very generic and not all that involving home invasion thriller. But then, fortunately, starting with the sequel, The Purge Anarchy, we would get Frank Grillo coming into the mix, the best Punisher who never was, if you ask me. And James DeMonaco also made the smart choice to just very gleefully toss any concerns about credibility right out the window. Now, I have heard that they are going to be bringing Grillo back for another installment in the series, which on the one hand makes me go yippee, but at the same time, as much as the Grillo entries in this franchise are easily my favorites and probably the only ones that I would ever rewatch, I still can't help but feel that this is a franchise whose inspiration has kind of come and gone and is done now, or at least it should be done. I mean, you can only go back to the well with this kind of a premise so many times, and the Forever Purge, if you'll remember, just kind of disregarded its own premise anyways by having these guys sort of ignore the fact that the purge is over and decide that they're just going to go do it anyways. At that point, it's just a generic thriller. I mean, if and when that one comes out and it's actually a good movie, I will admit it. But I really don't think you have to at this point. If I was you guys, I would just call this one a day. It's also hard not to chuckle bitterly when you see those opening titles telling you that in 2022, crime has been reduced to an all-time low, along with poverty and unemployment, all thanks to the Purge. And here we are in 2023, and yeah, it didn't quite work out that way, did it, folks? Anyway, if you never saw the first Purge film or any of the Purge films, you don't necessarily need to start with this one. I mean, if you saw this one when it first came out and you want to maybe revisit it and reevaluate, you might be surprised by some of the things that you end up liking that you didn't the first time round. That was my experience, certainly. But if you're new to the franchise, I would not hesitate to recommend that you start with the sequel, 2014's Purge Anarchy. In fact, I might even think that if you watched this one after you watched Purge Anarchy, it would probably feel like a more natural flow because, you've already got then an established idea of how this whole concept affects the city and the world at large. And then you get to zero in and have sort of one little anthology entry that focuses on a specific family during that night. And in the words of Forrest Gump, that's all I have to say about that. Thank you so much for watching. Keep your eyes peeled. Savage Zombie reviews and The Real Fifth Beatle, and I think JT's horror discussions as well, are all going to be getting together later on the weekend to do a ranking of our favorite films of the 2000s. That is going to be a lot of fun, I guarantee it. Hope you're all having an awesome Thursday, and keep your eyes peeled to the channel for more content real soon. Catch you later.